Wolf eyes. A single mom with a secret, her baby has wolf eyes. The coffee shop's morning rush had finally died down when Maya Chen noticed the man watching her from the corner booth. Again. She'd seen him 3 times this week, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it and eyes the color of storm clouds. Each time, he'd ordered black coffee, sat in the same spot, and studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken and her instincts scream danger. Maya wiped down the espresso machine with more force than necessary, stealing glances at him through her lashes. He wore a leather jacket despite the Seattle heat, and there was something predatory in the way he held himself, coiled tension beneath casual stillness. "That guy's been coming in all week," whispered Jen, her coworker, as she restocked the pastry case. "He keeps asking about you." Maya's hand stilled on the chrome surface. "Asking what?" "Your schedule. Whether you're single." Jen waggled her eyebrows. "He's gorgeous, Maya. Like, stupidly gorgeous. You should talk to him." "No." The word came out sharper than intended. Maya forced her voice to soften. "I'm not interested in dating right now." It wasn't entirely a lie. Dating required trust, vulnerability, the ability to let someone into her carefully constructed life. And Maya's life had secrets that could destroy everything she'd built. Secrets with golden wolf eyes. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya's regular customers began trickling in for the afternoon shift. She threw herself into the familiar routine, grinding beans, steaming milk, crafting intricate latte art that earned tips and compliments. But she could feel storm gray eyes tracking her every movement. At closing time, Jen left early for a date, leaving Maya alone to clean up. She was mopping the floor when she heard the soft knock on the glass door. The stranger stood outside, one hand pressed against the window. Up close, she could see the sharp angles of his face, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a wolf disguised as a man. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She should ignore him, finish cleaning, and leave through the back exit. Instead, she found herself walking to the door. "We're closed," she called through the glass, though she made no move to walk away. "I know." His voice was deep, rough around the edges. "I need to talk to you, Maya." The sound of her name on his lips sent an electric shock through her system. "How do you know my name?" "Your name tag." A ghost of a smile played at the corners of his mouth, but his eyes remained serious. "Haunted." "Please. It's important." Every rational thought told her to walk away. Instead, Maya turned the lock and cracked the door open, keeping the chain engaged. "What do you want?" "My name is Kai Morrison." He stepped closer, and she caught his scent, pine forests and rain and something wild that made her wolf-born son's image flash through her mind. "I think we have something to discuss." "Something about 18 months ago." Maya's blood turned to ice water. Her grip tightened on the door handle until her knuckles went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Denver." His voice was barely above a whisper, but it hit her like a thunderclap. "The conference. Room 412 at the Grand Marriott." The world tilted sideways. Maya's mouth went dry as desert sand as memories crashed over her, a business trip, too much wine at the hotel bar, storm gray eyes and gentle hands, and a night that had felt like magic until morning brought regret and a hastily written note of apology. A night that had given her a son with impossible golden eyes. "You left," she whispered, the words scraping her throat raw. "I had to." Pain flickered across his features. "Maya, there are things about me. About that night, that you need to understand." "I understand perfectly." She started to close the door, but his hand shot out to stop it. His fingers were pale against the dark wood, and she noticed the thin scars across his knuckles. "You got what you wanted and disappeared. End of story." "No." The word came out as a growl that raised goosebumps along her arms. "Not end of story. Beginning of story. Maya, I've been looking for you for months." He stopped, his jaw clenching. Is there somewhere private we can talk? There's nothing to talk about. Isn't there? His eyes bored into hers, and she saw something primal lurking beneath the civilized surface. Something that recognized the secret she'd been hiding. Maya, I need you to think very carefully. After that night, did anything change? The question hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Maya's hands trembled as she stared into those storm-gray eyes, seeing her own reflection fractured in their depths. Did anything change? Everything had changed. Her body, her life, her entire understanding of what was possible in this world. But how could he know? How could he possibly know about the baby she'd hidden, about the impossible golden eyes that had stared back at her from the delivery room, about the pediatrician she'd bribed to falsify records and the desperate midnight moves from city to city to keep her secret safe? I don't know what you're implying, she managed, but her voice betrayed her with its shakiness. Kai's nostrils flared slightly, as if he were scenting the air. You're lying. His voice was gentle despite the accusation. Maya, please. I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to trust me. Where we can't be overheard. Trust him? The man who had vanished without explanation, leaving her to face an impossible pregnancy alone? Her laugh came out bitter and sharp. Trust isn't exactly your strong suit. I know. He stepped back, giving her space, but his eyes never left hers. I know I have no right to ask. But Maya, if I'm right about what happened, then you and the baby. What baby? The denial shot out of her like a bullet. Kai's expression softened with something that looked like sympathy. The baby with golden eyes. The one who probably doesn't cry like other children, who seems to understand more than he should, who makes you afraid of what he might become. Maya's knees nearly buckled. The chain on the door was the only thing keeping her upright as the words hit her like physical blows. How could he know? How could he possibly know about Ethan's uncanny silence, about the way her son seemed to track movement with predatory focus, about the nightmares that woke her up screaming because she'd dreamed of him changing into something with teeth and claws? You're insane, she whispered, but there was no conviction left in her voice. Am I? Kai's hand pressed against the glass again, fingers splayed wide. Maya, look at me. Really look at me. Against her better judgment, she did. She looked past the handsome features and the carefully controlled expression to something deeper. Something wild and inhuman that called to a part of herself she'd tried to bury 18 months ago. The part that had recognized him instantly in that hotel bar. The part that had felt like she was coming home when he'd taken her to bed. The part that had known, even as she'd left that apologetic note, that what they'd shared was more than just a one-night stand. What are you? She breathed. What we are, he corrected gently. And Maya, if our son inherited what I think he did, then he's in danger. We're all in danger. Our son. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd never planned to tell Ethan about his father, had convinced herself it was better this way. Safer. But looking at Kai now, seeing the desperate honesty in his eyes, she realized she'd been lying to herself. She'd been hoping he would find her. The alley, she said suddenly. Behind the shop. Give me 5 minutes to finish locking up. Relief flooded Kai's features. Thank you. Maya closed the door and leaned against it, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She should run. Should grab Ethan from the babysitter and disappear into the night like she'd done twice before. But something told her running wouldn't work this time. Kai had found her once. He would find her again. And maybe, God help her, she didn't want to run anymore. Her hands shook as she finished the closing routine, checking locks and turning off lights with mechanical precision while her mind raced. Ethan was safe with Mrs. Rodriguez for another hour, giving her time to hear whatever impossible truth Kai had to tell. She slipped out the back door into the narrow alley that smelled of coffee grounds and Seattle rain. Kai was waiting for her, leaning against the brick wall with his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. In the dim light, his eyes seemed to glow. Start talking, she said, crossing her arms over her chest like armor. 18 months ago, you met me at the worst possible time. His voice was quiet, meant for her ears alone. I was in the middle of a transition. Something I'd been fighting for years. What kind of transition? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his words came out in a rush. I'm a werewolf, Maya. And that night, when we were together, I wasn't fully in control. The words hung between them like a physical presence. Maya stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for him to admit this was all some elaborate joke. He didn't. You're serious, she said finally. Dead serious. Werewolves aren't real. Your son has golden eyes. It wasn't a question. He's stronger than he should be, isn't he? Faster? His senses are more acute than other babies? Maya's throat constricted. Everything he was describing fit Ethan perfectly, the way he could hear her coming from 3 rooms away, the way he'd grabbed a falling glass out of midair at 8 months old, the way he seemed to see in the dark. That's impossible, she whispered. Is it? Kai stepped closer, and in the shadows his face looked more angular, more predatory. Maya, what do you remember about that night? Really remember? She closed her eyes, letting herself sink back into memories she'd tried so hard to forget. The hotel bar, the storm raging outside, the way Kai had seemed to call to something wild inside her. The way his touch had set her on fire, the way she'd felt like she could trust him with anything. The way his eyes had seemed to glow in the darkness. And afterwards, the dreams. Months of dreams where she ran through forests on 4 legs, where the moon sang in her blood, where she hunted with pack that felt more like family than her real family ever had. Dreams she'd dismissed as pregnancy hormones and stress. Oh God, she breathed. You felt it, didn't you? The connection. The pull. Kai's voice was rough with emotion. Maya, that night wasn't just a random encounter. We're mates. Mates? The word came out as a croak. Maya backed against the brick wall, her legs suddenly unsteady. What does that even mean? It means we're bound. Kai's eyes never left hers, and she could see the tension in every line of his body. Soul deep. It means that night wasn't an accident, it was recognition. Your wolf calling to mine. I don't have a wolf. But even as she said it, Maya felt something stirring in her chest, something that had been sleeping for 18 months. Something that perked up at his presence like a dog hearing its master's voice. You do now. His voice was gentle, almost reverent. The bond awakened it. Maya, you're not fully human anymore. The alley spun around her. Maya pressed her palms against the rough brick, using the pain to anchor herself to reality. This is insane. People don't just become werewolves. This isn't some paranormal romance novel. Look at me. She didn't want to, but her eyes were drawn to his face like metal to a magnet. As she watched, his irises began to glow with silver light, and his features sharpened into something distinctly non-human. Not monster, but definitely not entirely man. Jesus Christ, she whispered. The baby, Maya. His voice had taken on a rough, gravelly quality that made her skin prickle. Where is he? Why? Protective instincts flared to life, overriding her shock. So you can take him? Disappear again? Pain flickered across Kai's features as his face returned to human normal. So I can protect him. Maya, there are others like us. Others who won't see our son as a miracle. His jaw clenched. They'll see him as an abomination. Others? Packs. Councils. Ancient laws that don't account for what we've created. He ran a hand through his dark hair, leaving it more disheveled than before. A human-born werewolf child is unprecedented. There are those who would kill him simply for existing. Maya's protective instincts roared to life. No one touches my baby. Our baby. The correction was firm but not unkind. And you're right, no one will touch him. Not while I'm alive. His eyes met hers, blazing with fierce determination. But Maya, I can't protect you both if you keep running. I can't protect you if you won't let me. You left me. The words tore from her throat, 18 months of hurt and fear and loneliness pouring out. I woke up and you were gone. No note, no phone number, nothing. I had to face the pregnancy alone, the birth alone, every terrifying moment when I thought there was something wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with him. He has the eyes of a predator. The words exploded out of her. He's 7 months old and he doesn't cry when he's hurt, he growls. He tracks movement like he's hunting. Sometimes I catch him staring at me like he's deciding whether I'm prey. Because he's protecting you. Kai's voice was soft with wonder. Maya, he's not deciding if you're prey. He's making sure you're safe. It's instinct. How can you know that? Because I feel the same way. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Every moment since I left Denver, I felt like I was missing half my soul. Every day has been a battle against the need to find you, to make sure you were safe. Then why did you leave? Kai's face twisted with something that looked like shame. Because I was a coward. The admission seemed to cost him. Because I woke up that morning and realized what I'd done, that I'd bonded with a human without her knowledge or consent. That I'd potentially sentenced you to a life you never chose. Maya stared at him, seeing the genuine anguish in his expression. So you decided for me. You decided it was better to abandon me than to let me make my own choice. Yes. The word was barely audible. And I was wrong. I've been wrong about everything. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Maya felt her anger wavering, replaced by something more complicated. Hurt, yes, but also recognition. She'd made her own choices based on fear, running from city to city, hiding their son's existence, building walls around her heart. Where have you been? She asked quietly. Looking for you. His laugh was bitter. Do you have any idea how many Maya Chens there are in this country? How many coffee shops you've worked at? I've been following your trail for months, always one step behind. How did you finally find me? You used your real name on the apartment lease. He shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. I hired a private investigator. Maya, I know how this looks, but I wasn't stalking you. I was trying to figure out how to approach you without scaring you. Mission accomplished on that front, she said dryly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You always did have a smart mouth. The comment was so casually intimate that it sent a shock through her system. For a moment, she was back in that hotel room, trading witty banter between kisses, feeling more herself than she ever had before. Maya. His voice had gone serious again. I need to see him. I need to know he's okay. Every maternal instinct she possessed screamed in protest. This man was a stranger, despite their history. Werewolf or not, she didn't really know him. Didn't know what he was capable of. But looking at his face, seeing the desperate hope and fear warring in his expression, she saw something else. She saw a father who had missed the first 7 months of his child's life. A man who had come looking for them despite not even knowing for certain that the baby existed. He's with the babysitter, she said finally. Mrs. Rodriguez. She lives 2 blocks from here. Relief flooded Kai's features. Would you let me see him? Maya checked her phone. I need to pick him up in 20 minutes anyway. She looked up at him, decision crystallizing in her chest. But if you're lying about any of this, if you're some kind of con man or psychopath, I will end you. I wouldn't expect anything less. His smile was soft, genuine. Thank you, Maya. She pushed off from the wall, her legs still unsteady but holding her weight. Don't thank me yet. You haven't met him. What's his name? Ethan. She glanced at him sideways as they walked toward the mouth of the alley. Ethan James Chen. Not Morrison? The question was carefully neutral, but Maya heard the hurt underneath it. You weren't there to ask. Kai absorbed this without comment, falling into step beside her as they emerged onto the sidewalk. Seattle's evening rush was in full swing, the streets crowded with commuters heading home. Maya was acutely aware of Kai beside her, the way he moved with predatory grace, the way his head turned at sounds she couldn't hear, the way other pedestrians seemed to instinctively give him space. Maya, he said as they waited for a crosswalk signal. Before we get there are things you need to know. About what Ethan is, what he might become. Such as? He'll be stronger than human children. Faster. His senses will be incredibly acute. Kai's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. He'll probably start showing signs of a temper around age 2, that's when the wolf begins to assert itself. Maya's stomach clenched. What kind of signs? Possessiveness. Aggression when he perceives threats to his pack, you, primarily. The light changed and they crossed the street together. He won't shift until puberty, but the instincts will be there long before then. Shift. The word felt foreign on her tongue. You mean actually turn into a wolf? Yes. And me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. What about me? Kai was quiet for several steps. I don't know, he admitted finally. What we did, the bonding between species, it's never been documented before. You're changing, Maya. I can smell it on you, see it in the way you move. But I don't know how far the change will go. What do you mean, you can smell it? You smell like pack now. Like home. His voice was rough with emotion. Like you belong to me. The possessive note in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through her core, awakening desires she'd tried to bury. I don't belong to anyone. Don't you? He stopped walking, turning to face her on the crowded sidewalk. People flowed around them like water around stones, but Maya felt like they were alone in the universe. Maya, that night in Denver, tell me you didn't feel it. The connection. The sense that you'd found something you didn't even know you were missing. She wanted to lie, to protect herself, but the words wouldn't come. Because she had felt it. She'd felt like she was finally complete, like every relationship before Kai had been a pale imitation of what connection could be. I felt it, she whispered. So did I. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin with devastating gentleness. Maya, I know this is overwhelming. I know you have every reason not to trust me. But please. Give me a chance to prove that I'm not going anywhere this time. Standing there on the busy Seattle street with his hand on her face, Maya felt 18 months of carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. This was dangerous. This was stupid. This was everything she'd promised herself she wouldn't do. But looking into Kai's storm-gray eyes, seeing the sincerity there, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Hope. Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment is just around the corner, she said instead of answering his plea. He dropped his hand, but she caught a flash of satisfaction in his expression before he schooled it back to neutral. Lead the way. As they walked the final block, Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. In a few minutes, Kai would meet their son. The baby she'd protected and hidden and worried over for 7 months. The child with impossible golden eyes and inhuman strength. The living proof that fairy tales weren't always beautiful. Kai, she said as they approached Mrs. Rodriguez's building. He's not like other babies. I know. I mean it. He's. She struggled for the right words. He's intense. Even for a 7-month-old. Sometimes when I look at him, I feel like he's the adult and I'm the child. He's an alpha. The words were matter of fact, but Maya heard the pride underneath them. A what? A dominant wolf. A leader. Kai's smile was fierce with paternal love. Of course he is. He's our son. Maya wanted to ask what that meant, what kind of future lay ahead for a baby born to lead creatures that shouldn't exist. But they'd reached the apartment building, and Mrs. Rodriguez was already waiting by the front entrance with Ethan in her arms. The older woman's face lit up when she saw Maya, but her expression grew wary when she noticed Kai. Ethan, however, went completely still in his babysitter's arms. His head turned toward Kai with predatory focus, and Maya watched in shock as her son's golden eyes began to glow. "Dios mío," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, crossing herself with her free hand. Maya stepped forward quickly, reaching for her baby. But before she could take him, Ethan made a sound she'd never heard before, a rumbling purr that seemed to come from deep in his chest. And Kai answered with a sound of his own, a low rumble that made Maya's bones vibrate in sympathy. Father and son regarded each other across 3 feet of space, and Maya realized with crystal clarity that there was no going back from this moment. Her secret was out. The father had found his child. And everything she'd built to keep them safe was about to change forever. "He knows you," Maya breathed, watching in fascination as Ethan strained toward Kai with his little arms outstretched. The baby's golden eyes were locked on his father's face with an intensity that should have been impossible for a 7-month-old. Mrs. Rodriguez looked between them with wide, frightened eyes. "Maya, Mija," his eyes, they're glowing. "It's okay, Mrs. Rodriguez." Maya kept her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. "This is Ethan's father." "But his eyes." "Please." Maya reached for her son, and Mrs. Rodriguez handed him over with obvious relief. The moment Ethan was in her arms, he settled, but his gaze remained fixed on Kai. "Thank you for watching him. I'll see you tomorrow." The older woman hurried back into her building, muttering prayers in rapid Spanish. Maya couldn't blame her, she'd probably be doing the same thing if she hadn't had 7 months to adjust to her son's otherworldly nature. "Can I?" Kai's voice was rough with emotion as he gestured toward Ethan. Maya hesitated for only a moment before stepping closer. Ethan immediately reached for his father, tiny fingers grasping at the air between them. When Kai extended his hand, the baby grabbed his finger with surprising strength and made that rumbling sound again. "Hello, little wolf," Kai whispered, and Maya saw tears gathering in his eyes. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." Ethan's response was to tighten his grip on his father's finger and gurgle something that sounded almost like speech. Maya had never seen her son react to anyone this way, not even to her. There was recognition in those golden eyes, an ancient knowing that made her shiver. "He's beautiful," Kai said, his voice thick. "Maya, he's perfect." "He's dangerous," she corrected quietly. "Last week he threw his bottle clear across the room when he got frustrated. It left a dent in the wall. Baby strength surges are normal for our kind." Kai's free hand came up to stroke Ethan's downy dark hair. "He'll learn control." "Our kind." The words felt strange on her tongue. "I'm still not sure I believe any of this." "You will." Kai looked up at her, and she saw the wolf lurking behind his human features. "Maya, we need to talk. Really talk. There are things you need to understand before." He broke off, his head snapping up like a hunting dog catching a scent. His entire body went rigid, and Maya felt Ethan tense in her arms. "What is it?" she whispered. "We're being watched." His voice was barely audible, but she heard every word clearly. Which should have been impossible given the traffic noise around them. "Maya, I need you to listen very carefully. In 30 seconds, I want you to walk into that coffee shop across the street. Take Ethan to the bathroom and lock the door." "Why? What's happening?" "Someone followed me here." His grip on Ethan's finger tightened protectively. "Someone who shouldn't know about either of you." Fear spiked through Maya's chest like ice water. "Who?" "Pack business." His eyes met hers, blazing with fierce protectiveness. "Maya, go. Now. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving me. You're protecting our son." The distinction was important, she could tell. "Please. Trust me." Everything in her rebelled against running, but one look at Ethan's face decided her. Her baby was alert, tense, his golden eyes scanning the street with predatory awareness. If he sensed danger, then danger was real. "Find us," she said simply. Relief flickered across Kai's features. "Always." Maya forced herself to walk casually across the street, chatting nonsense to Ethan as if this were any normal evening. But her heart was hammering and every instinct screamed at her to run. Behind her, she could feel Kai watching until she reached the coffee shop door. The moment she stepped inside, she heard the growl. It was low, menacing, and entirely inhuman. Every person in the coffee shop froze, their conversations dying mid-sentence as some primal part of their brains registered the sound of an apex predator. Maya clutched Ethan tighter and headed for the bathroom, but before she could reach it, the front window exploded inward in a shower of glass and wood. Two men crashed through the opening, moving faster than humans should be able to move. One was tall and lean with silver-streaked hair, the other shorter but built like a linebacker. Both had eyes that glowed with predatory light. More werewolves. The coffee shop erupted into screams and chaos as customers dove for cover. Maya pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible, but Ethan had other ideas. Her son let out a sound that was part baby cry, part wolf howl, and both intruders snapped their attention to her. "There," the tall one said, his voice carrying clearly over the pandemonium. "The human female. She has the child." "I can smell him from here," the shorter one replied, his nostrils flaring. "Impossible. An abomination." They started toward her with predatory focus, and Maya realized she was going to die. These creatures, whatever they were, had come for her baby, and she was powerless to stop them. But then Kai exploded through the broken window like an avenging angel. He moved faster than thought, slamming into the shorter werewolf with enough force to send them both crashing into the service counter. Coffee machines toppled and ceramic shattered as they fought, snarling and clawing with inhuman ferocity. The tall werewolf lunged for Maya, but Ethan let out another howl that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. The sound was impossibly loud, impossibly deep, and it stopped the attacking werewolf in his tracks. "What?" the tall werewolf began. "Alpha call," Kai snarled from across the room, where he had the other werewolf pinned beneath him. Blood streaked his face, but his eyes blazed with triumphant fury. "He's calling his pack." Maya felt it then, a pull in her chest, a response to her son's cry that seemed to bypass her conscious mind entirely. Power flowed through her veins like liquid fire, and suddenly she could smell everything: fierce sweat from the humans, the metallic tang of spilled blood, the wild musk of werewolves. Most importantly, she could smell pack. Family. Home. The scent was coming from Kai and Ethan, binding them together with invisible threads that felt stronger than steel. "You," the tall werewolf breathed, staring at her with shock. "You're changing. Right here, right now." Maya looked down at her hands and saw her fingernails lengthening into claws. Her vision sharpened until she could see every detail of the room with crystal clarity. And when she looked up at the werewolf threatening her child, she felt her lips pull back in a snarl that would have made any predator proud. "Stay away from my baby," she growled, and her voice carried harmonics that definitely weren't human. The werewolf actually stepped back. "This is impossible. Humans don't change. Not without the bite." "Our mate bond is different," Kai said, rising from where he'd knocked out the other attacker. He moved toward Maya with fluid grace, positioning himself between her and the remaining threat. "She's not just human anymore, Marcus. And neither is our son." "Marcus?" Maya recognized the name from somewhere, but her mind was too full of new scents and sounds to place it. "Council enforcer," Kai explained without taking his eyes off the other werewolf. "Sent to clean up the mess I made." "You were ordered to eliminate the human," Marcus said coldly. "To ensure no hybrid offspring survived. Instead, you've created two abominations." "I've created a family." Kai's voice was deadly quiet. "And if you threaten them, I'll tear your throat out. You're outnumbered, Morrison. There are 3 more of us outside." As if on cue, shadows moved past the broken window. Maya's enhanced vision picked out shapes moving with predatory stealth, surrounding the coffee shop. Terror and rage roared in her chest, but underneath both emotions was something new. Certainty. Absolute, bone-deep knowledge that she would die before she let anyone hurt her son. Maya, Kai said quietly. Can you shift? Shift into what? I don't know how to be a werewolf. You don't have to know. Just feel it. His voice was hypnotically calm despite the danger surrounding them. Feel the wolf that's been sleeping inside you. Call her out. Maya closed her eyes and reached inward, searching for something she'd never known existed. At first there was nothing but confusion and fear. But then she felt it, a presence curled up in the deepest part of her soul, ancient and patient and wild. The wolf opened golden eyes that matched her son's exactly. Pack, the wolf whispered in her mind. Protect Pack. I can feel her, Maya breathed. Then let her out. Maya looked at Kai, at the man who had turned her world upside down and given her the most precious gift imaginable. At their son, who gazed back at her with complete trust and love. At the enemies gathering outside who wanted to destroy everything she held dear. She let the wolf rise. The change took her like a wildfire, burning through her human limitations with exhilarating intensity. Her bones stretched and reformed, muscles rippling with newfound power. Her senses exploded outward until she could hear heartbeats 3 blocks away, smell the fear and excitement of every person in a 5-block radius. When the transformation was complete, Maya stood on 4 legs in the middle of the ruined coffee shop, her fur as black as midnight except for the silver markings around her eyes. She was smaller than the male werewolves but perfectly proportioned, built for speed and stealth rather than brute force. Ethan let out a delighted giggle from where he sat on the floor. Apparently, 7-month-old werewolves were perfectly comfortable with shape-shifting parents. Marcus stared at her in shock. Impossible, he breathed. Maya's response was to bare fangs the length of her thumb and emit a growl that made the remaining windows rattle in their frames. Outside, she heard answering growls from the other council enforcers. They were moving in for the kill. But Maya Chen was no longer just a frightened single mother trying to protect her secret. She was a werewolf protecting her pack. And she was done running. Kai shifted beside her, his transformation swift and practiced. Where a man had stood, a massive silver wolf now crouched, easily twice Maya's size with scars marking his muzzle and flanks. Battle-tested. Dangerous. Mate, her wolf whispered in recognition, and Maya felt the bond between them snap into place like a physical thing. She could sense his thoughts, his fierce protective love, his readiness to die for their family. Always, came his response, warm and sure in her mind. Marcus was backing toward the broken window, his confidence evaporating as he faced not 1 but 2 werewolves ready to defend their young. This changes nothing, he snarled. The council will never accept what you've created. Kai's mental voice was ice-cold when he replied, then the council will have to go through us. The first enforcer appeared at the window, a rust-colored wolf with yellow eyes and foam flecking his muzzle. Behind him, Maya caught glimpses of 2 more shapes moving in the darkness. Her enhanced hearing picked up the whisper of claws on concrete, the soft pants of predators preparing to strike. Ethan sat between his parents, perfectly calm despite the chaos around him. Maya marveled at her son's composure. Any human baby would be screaming in terror, but Ethan seemed to understand that his pack was here. That he was safe. The rust-colored wolf leaped through the window with a snarl that spoke of hunger for violence. Kai met him mid-air, and they crashed into the espresso machine in a tangle of fur and fangs. The other enforcers poured through the opening like a flood of death. Maya found herself moving with instincts she'd never known she possessed. Her wolf body was built for speed and agility, allowing her to dart between the massive males while her claws found vulnerable spots, tendons, arteries, the soft flesh behind ears. She fought like what she was, a mother protecting her young. But they were outnumbered, and the council enforcers were experienced killers. Maya felt teeth sink into her shoulder, felt claws rake across her ribs. Pain flared through her nervous system, but underneath it was a burning fury that seemed to feed on itself. No one touches my baby. The thought blazed through her mind with nuclear intensity, and suddenly Maya wasn't tired anymore. Wasn't overwhelmed. Power flooded her veins like molten gold, and when she threw back her head and howled, the sound shattered every remaining window in the coffee shop. More importantly, it was answered. From somewhere in the distance came a responding howl, then another, then a chorus that seemed to shake the very foundations of Seattle. Maya's enhanced senses picked up the scent of approaching wolves, not council enforcers, but something else. Something wild and free and utterly untamed. The ferals, Marcus gasped from where Kai had him pinned. You called the ferals. Maya didn't know what ferals were, but from the fear in Marcus's voice, they weren't friends of the council. Through the broken windows, she could see shapes moving in the darkness, dozens of them, flowing through the streets like a river of predators. The rust-colored wolf that had been attacking her suddenly released his hold and backed away, his ears flattened against his skull. Around the coffee shop, the other enforcers were doing the same, their attention split between the family they'd come to kill and the approaching threat. What are ferals? Maya asked Kai through their bond. Werewolves who rejected pack structure, came his reply. They live wild, follow no council, answer to no alpha. Most packs consider them outcasts. But they're coming to help us? Kai's mental voice was grim with understanding. They're coming for Ethan. Maya, our son's call, it wasn't just an alpha summons. It was something more. Before Maya could ask what he meant, the first of the ferals arrived. The wolf that leaped through the window was unlike any of the others Maya had seen. Where the council enforcers were sleek and controlled, this creature was wild in every sense of the word. His fur was matted and unkempt, his eyes held the feral light of an animal that had never known human civilization, and when he opened his mouth, his howl spoke of forests and hunt and freedom. But when his gaze fell on Ethan, the wild wolf went absolutely still. Then, to Maya's shock, he lowered himself to the ground in a position of submission. More ferals poured through the window, and each one repeated the same gesture. Within moments, a dozen of the wildest, most dangerous werewolves Maya could imagine were prostrating themselves before her 7-month-old son. Impossible, Marcus breathed. They bow to no one. They're ferals. But Maya was beginning to understand. Her son hadn't just called for help, he'd called his pack. And apparently, his pack was every werewolf wild enough to hear the true freedom in his voice. Ethan gurgled happily from his spot on the floor, reaching chubby hands toward the prostrate wolves. When one of them crept forward to sniff his fingers, the baby laughed with pure delight. The sound was so innocent, so purely joyful, that Maya felt her heart crack open. This was her son. Not a monster, not an abomination, but a child who could call the wild things home with his laughter. He's their alpha, Kai's mental voice was full of wonder. Maya, our son is the alpha of every werewolf who chooses freedom over servitude. But he's just a baby. Alpha isn't about age. It's about strength of spirit. Kai's wolf form moved to stand beside Ethan, who immediately grabbed a handful of silver fur and held on. And our son has the strongest spirit I've ever encountered. The council enforcers were edging toward the broken window, clearly recognizing that the odds had shifted dramatically against them. But Marcus remained pinned beneath Kai's claws, his yellow eyes burning with fanatic fury. You think this changes anything? He snarled. The council will never stop. They'll send armies. They'll turn every pack against you. Will they? The voice came from the doorway, smooth and cultured and entirely human. Maya spun toward the sound and saw a woman stepping through the coffee shop's front entrance. She was tall and elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes the color of winter storms. Despite the chaos around her, she moved with the calm confidence of someone utterly secure in her own power. Every werewolf in the room, council enforcers and ferals alike, went completely still. Lady Evelyn, Marcus whispered, and Maya heard genuine fear in his voice for the first time. The woman smiled, but there was nothing warm about the expression. Hello, Marcus. I trust you have a very good explanation for why you're terrorizing a mother and child in downtown Seattle. Council business, my lady. The Morrison incident is no longer council business. Lady Evelyn's voice carried absolute authority. As of 1 hour ago, Kai Morrison and his family are under the protection of the Northwestern Pac Alliance. Maya felt Kai's shock through their bond. The alliance hasn't involved itself in council politics for 50 years, he told her silently. Lady Evelyn's gaze moved to Maya, and she inclined her head with formal respect. Lady Morrison. Your son's call reached us in Vancouver. We came as quickly as we could. Lady Morrison? Maya was still in wolf form, but somehow her confusion translated clearly. You are mated to an alpha. That makes you an alpha female. Lady Evelyn's smile became genuinely warm as she looked at Ethan. And you are the mother of what appears to be the most powerful alpha born in 3 centuries. Ethan chose that moment to clap his hands together and laugh, as if he understood exactly what was happening. Several of the prostrate ferals whined softly in response, their tails wagging despite their submissive positions. This is unprecedented, Marcus protested. The council has jurisdiction. The council has jurisdiction over its own members, Lady Evelyn corrected coolly. Mr. Morrison resigned his PAC affiliations 18 months ago. Ms. Chen was never council in the first place. And their son. She paused, studying Ethan with calculating eyes. Their son appears to have declared himself something entirely new. Maya felt a chill of fear. What does that mean? It means, my dear, that you have 3 choices. Lady Evelyn moved closer, her presence somehow both comforting and terrifying. You can come with me to Vancouver, where the Alliance will protect you while we figure out what your son represents. You can try to run again, which I don't recommend given that every werewolf in North America now knows you exist. Her gaze moved to the prostrate ferals. Or you can embrace what your son is becoming and help him forge a new path for our kind. What kind of path? Kai had shifted back to human form and was pulling on his torn clothes. His hair was disheveled and blood streaked his face, but his eyes burned with fierce protectiveness. Lady Evelyn's smile turned predatory. The kind that makes ancient councils obsolete. Marcus struggled against Kai's hold. You can't, this is treason against everything we've built. What you've built, Lady Evelyn corrected, is a system based on fear and control. What that child represents is freedom. She gestured to the ferals, who were still prostrated around Ethan. Look at them, Marcus. When did you last see ferals submit to anyone? When did you last see such unity across pack lines? Maya was beginning to understand the magnitude of what was happening. Her son hadn't just called for help, he'd started a revolution. We need time to think, she said, shifting back to human form with an ease that surprised her. The change felt natural now, as if she'd been doing it her whole life. Of course. Lady Evelyn inclined her head graciously. But I'm afraid time is a luxury you may not have much of. Word of tonight's events will spread quickly. By morning, every pack alpha in the country will know about your son. And they'll all want to control him, Kai said grimly. Some will. Lady Evelyn's expression grew serious. Others will want to kill him before he can challenge their authority. And a few, a precious few, will recognize him for what he truly is. Which is? Maya asked. Lady Evelyn looked at Ethan, who was now crawling toward one of the ferals with obvious delight. The wild wolf remained perfectly still as chubby baby hands explored his ears and muzzle. Hope, she said simply. For the first time in centuries, our kind has hope for something better than endless territorial wars and political scheming. Her gaze returned to Maya. Your son could unite us all. Or he could destroy everything we've built. That's a lot of pressure to put on a 7-month-old, Maya said dryly. Lady Evelyn laughed, a sound like silver bells. Indeed. Which is why he'll need the strongest pack imaginable to protect him while he grows into his power. Around the coffee shop, the ferals were beginning to stir. One by one, they crept closer to Ethan, drawn by some invisible force. Maya watched in amazement as her son gurgled happily at each new wolf, completely unafraid of creatures that could tear him apart without effort. They love him, she realized. They recognize him, Lady Evelyn corrected. As their alpha. As their freedom. She looked at Maya seriously. The question is, are you prepared to be the mother of a legend? Maya looked at Kai, seeing her own fears and hopes reflected in his storm-gray eyes. Then she looked at Ethan, who had somehow convinced a dozen feral werewolves to let him use them as living toys. Her son. Her impossible, wonderful, terrifying son. I'm prepared to be the mother of my child, she said finally. Everything else we'll figure out as we go. Lady Evelyn's smile was brilliant with approval. Spoken like a true alpha female. She turned to Marcus, who was still struggling weakly against Kai's hold. You can tell the Council that the Northwestern Pack Alliance officially recognizes the Morrison Pack as sovereign territory. Morrison Pack? Maya blinked. You, your mate, and your son. Lady Evelyn's eyes twinkled with amusement. Plus, apparently, every feral werewolf in the Pacific Northwest. Congratulations, Alpha Morrison. You're officially the leader of the largest pack in North America. Maya stared at her in shock. But I don't know how to be an alpha. I don't know anything about werewolf politics or pack dynamics or... You'll learn. Lady Evelyn's voice was confident. And until you do, you'll have allies. She gestured to the ferals. They chose you. That's not something that happens lightly. One of the ferals, a gray female with intelligent amber eyes, had crept close enough for Ethan to grab her ear. Instead of pulling away, the wolf carefully lowered her head so the baby could explore more easily. Pack, Maya's wolf whispered in satisfaction. Strong pack. Looking around the destroyed coffee shop at the unlikely collection of beings who had somehow become her responsibility, Maya felt the last of her walls crumble. For 18 months she'd been running, hiding, trying to protect her son from a world that would never understand him. But maybe understanding wasn't the point. Maybe acceptance was enough. What happens now? She asked. Lady Evelyn's smile was full of promise and threat in equal measure. Now, my dear, you change the world. Change the world, Maya repeated, the words feeling surreal on her tongue. Around her, the coffee shop looked like a war zone, shattered glass, overturned furniture, and a dozen wild werewolves arranged in a protective circle around her baby. Right. No pressure. The pressure was always there, Kai said quietly, moving to stand beside her. From the moment Ethan was born with those eyes, this was inevitable. Lady Evelyn nodded approvingly. Your mate is wise. The question was never whether your son would reshape our world, it was whether he'd do it with guidance or in chaos. Marcus finally stopped struggling against Kai's restraints, but his yellow eyes burned with undiminished hatred. You're all fools. The council has stood for 800 years. One hybrid child will bring it down. Won't it? The voice came from the gray female feral, who had somehow shifted to human form without Maya noticing. She was young, maybe 25, with scars marking her pale skin and amber eyes that held ancient wisdom. I've been running from council enforcers for 6 years. Tonight, for the first time, I felt what it was like to belong to something greater than survival. Other ferals were shifting now, revealing a collection of humans who looked like they'd been living rough, dirty clothes, unkempt hair, eyes that held too much pain and weariness. But when they looked at Ethan, those same eyes softened with something Maya had never expected to see from wild werewolves. Devotion. My name is Sarah, the gray female continued, never taking her gaze off Ethan. I've been feral for 6 years, ever since my birth pack tried to marry me off to an alpha 3 times my age. She looked up at Maya. Your son's call, it didn't just summon us. It offered us choice. For the first time in my life, I get to choose my pack. And you choose us? Maya's voice was uncertain. You don't even know us. Sarah's smile was fierce. I know your son stood up to counsel enforcers without fear. I know you turned wolf to protect him even though you'd never shifted before. I know your mate came looking for you both despite the danger. She gestured to the other ferals. We know enough. A tall, lean man with prematurely gray hair stepped forward. I'm Connor. Been running for 8 years. His voice was rough with disuse. Lost my first pack to a council purge, they decided we were getting too independent. His gaze fixed on Ethan with laser intensity. That little one's call felt like home. One by one, the other ferals introduced themselves. Maya listened to stories of exile, persecution, and loss. Werewolves who had been driven from their packs for refusing forced matings, for questioning alpha authority, for the simple crime of thinking differently. Each had been living as an outcast, barely surviving on the edges of werewolf society. Until tonight, when a 7-month-old baby had called them home. This is insane, Maya whispered to Kai. I don't know how to lead these people. I've been a werewolf for all of 30 minutes. You don't lead with experience, Lady Evelyn interjected, clearly having overheard. You lead with instinct. And your instincts are already proving quite sound. What do you mean? You protected your child against impossible odds. You trusted your mate despite having every reason not to. You accepted the change when it was necessary. Lady Evelyn's eyes glinted with approval. Most importantly, you're asking the right questions instead of pretending you have all the answers. Ethan chose that moment to crawl over to Maya's feet and pull himself up to standing, using her legs for support. His golden eyes were bright with intelligence as he babbled something that almost sounded like words. What's he saying? Sarah asked, kneeling down to his level. He's trying to say pack, Kai said with wonder. It's one of his first words. As if to confirm his father's interpretation, Ethan clapped his hands together and repeated the sound more clearly. Pack. The ferals exchanged glances full of meaning Maya was only beginning to understand. In their world, apparently, a baby's first word carrying such significance was no coincidence. We need to get out of here, Connor said, glancing toward the broken windows. Seattle PD will be here soon, and explaining this mess won't be easy. Already handled, Lady Evelyn said smoothly. My people are managing the scene. The official story will be a gas explosion, tragic, but not supernatural. Your people work fast, Kai observed. We've had centuries of practice. Lady Evelyn's smile was enigmatic. Now then, we need to discuss immediate plans. You can't stay in Seattle, too exposed. The council will send more enforcers, and next time they won't underestimate you. Where can we go? Maya asked, hefting Ethan higher on her hip. Her son seemed fascinated by the conversation, his golden eyes tracking from speaker to speaker like he was following every word. Vancouver, as I mentioned earlier. The Alliance has safe houses, training facilities. Lady Evelyn paused. But that would mean putting yourselves under our protection, following our rules. What's the alternative? Kai's voice was carefully neutral. Sarah spoke up. We know places. Hidden spots where the council never goes because they're too wild, too dangerous for civilized werewolves. Her amber eyes glowed with possibility. Places where a new kind of pack could learn to be free. Maya felt her wolf stir with interest. The idea of running deeper into the wilderness should have terrified her. She was a city girl, used to coffee shops and apartments and predictable schedules. But something about Sarah's words called to a part of her she'd never known existed. It would be dangerous, Lady Evelyn warned. No Alliance protection, no backup if things go wrong. But no one else's rules either, Connor added. No politics, no traditions that don't serve us. Just pack. Maya looked around the destroyed coffee shop at the unlikely collection of beings fate had thrown together. Feral werewolves who had chosen them as family. A mate who had spent months searching for them. A son who seemed destined to reshape their entire world. Her old life was over, that much was clear. The question was what kind of new life she wanted to build. Maya. Kai's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with a rightness that made her wolf purr in contentment. It's your choice. Whatever you decide, we'll face it together. She looked down at Ethan, who was watching her with those impossibly wise golden eyes. At 7 months old, he was already showing signs of the leader he would become, confident, protective, unafraid of the unknown. Maybe it was time for his mother to be equally fearless. Sarah, Maya said finally. These places you mentioned, would they be safe for a baby? Sarah's smile was radiant. The safest places in the world, Alpha. Hidden valleys where our kind has run free for thousands of years, untouched by council law or human encroachment. Alpha, Maya repeated, testing the title. It felt strange on her tongue, but not wrong. I'm really doing this, aren't I? Becoming the leader of a pack of outcasts and rebels. You're doing what your son needs, Lady Evelyn said softly. And what our kind needs, whether they realize it or not. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of decision settle across her shoulders like a mantle. Then we go with Sarah and Connor. We find these hidden places and figure out what it means to be free. The Ferrells exchanged glances full of excitement and approval. Even Marcus, still restrained by Kai, looked shaken by her declaration. This is a mistake, he said desperately. The council will never let you establish an independent pack. They'll hunt you down. Let them try, Maya said, and was surprised by the steel in her own voice. We'll be ready. Lady Evelyn studied her with calculating eyes. You realize what you're choosing? A life on the run, constant danger, no guarantee of safety for your child? As opposed to what? Hiding in coffee shops while my son grows up suppressing his true nature? Maya shook her head. At least this way, he'll be surrounded by people who understand what he is. People who love what he is, Sarah corrected softly. Ethan babbled agreement, reaching his chubby arms toward the assembled Ferrells. Several of them moved closer, and Maya watched in amazement as her son seemed to claim each one with a touch, tiny hands patting faces, grabbing fingers, bestowing what looked like benedictions. He's accepting them into pack, Kai said with wonder. Maya, look at his eyes. Maya looked and gasped. Ethan's golden eyes were glowing with soft light, and as each Ferrell received his touch, their own eyes began to echo that glow. Not the harsh light of aggression or power, but something warmer. Something that spoke of belonging. What's happening? She whispered. Pack bonds, Lady Evelyn breathed. But I've never seen anything like this. Usually it takes months, years to form connections this deep. Usually the alpha isn't 7 months old, Connor said dryly. Maybe babies just cut through the bullshit better than adults. Maya couldn't argue with that logic. Watching her son work his way through the group of Ferrells, she saw something beautiful taking shape. A family built not on blood or territory or politics, but on choice and love and mutual protection. When do we leave? She asked. Tonight, Sarah said immediately. The longer we stay in the city, the more chance of council reinforcements arriving. I need to pack. No time, Connor interrupted. We'll get what you need on the road. Right now, we need to disappear. Maya felt a pang of loss for the life she was leaving behind, her apartment with its carefully curated safety, her job that provided structure and routine, the illusion of normalcy she'd worked so hard to maintain. But looking at Kai and Ethan, surrounded by werewolves who had already proven they would die to protect them, she realized she wasn't losing anything that mattered. She was gaining everything she'd never known she wanted. Lady Evelyn, she said formally. Thank you. For coming when Ethan called, for offering us sanctuary. If we ever need the alliance. You'll have it, Lady Evelyn said firmly. What you're attempting, building a pack based on choice rather than tradition, it could change everything for our kind. The alliance will be watching with great interest. Just watching? Kai asked. Lady Evelyn's smile was cryptic. For now. But Alpha Morrison, she looked directly at Maya. When you're ready to change the world, you won't be doing it alone. With that promise hanging in the air, Lady Evelyn turned and walked out of the destroyed coffee shop, her footsteps echoing with quiet authority. Within moments, Maya heard the sound of vehicles departing, the Alliance forces that had been waiting in the shadows, ready to intervene if needed. "So," Connor said into the sudden quiet. "Anyone know how to hotwire a car?" Sarah snorted. "Please. I've been stealing transportation for 6 years." She looked at Maya apologetically. "Sorry, Alpha. Survival trumps legality when you're feral." "Right now, I'm pretty sure survival trumps everything," Maya said. "Do what you need to do." As the ferals began organizing their escape, Maya found herself alone with Kai and Ethan for the first time since the chaos began. Her mate moved close enough that she could feel his body heat, his presence a steady anchor in a world that had tilted completely off its axis. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Maya looked down at their son, who was yawning and rubbing his eyes. Apparently, even supernatural babies got sleepy after overthrowing the established order. She thought about the quiet life she'd planned, the safe anonymity she'd craved, the normal childhood she'd wanted to give Ethan. Then she thought about the way the ferals looked at her son, with hope and love and the kind of loyalty that couldn't be bought or commanded, only earned. "Ask me again in a year," she said finally. "When we've figured out what the hell we're doing." Kai's laugh was soft and warm. "Fair enough." He pressed a kiss to her temple, his lips warm against her skin. "For what it's worth, I think we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Leading a revolution we never asked for? Building the family we never knew we needed." Maya considered this as the ferals prepared to spirit them away into the night. A family of outcasts and rebels, united by a baby's impossible call. A pack built on freedom instead of fear. It wasn't the life she'd planned. But looking around at the faces of beings who had already proven they would die for her son, Maya realized it might be exactly the life they all deserved. "Alpha?" Sarah approached cautiously. "Cars are ready. Time to go." Maya took a deep breath and lifted Ethan higher on her hip. Her son looked up at her with those golden eyes that had started everything, and she saw her own determination reflected back at her. "Then let's go build a new world," she said. And with that, Maya Chen walked out of her old life and into legend. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any future paranormal takes.